Dames en heren, het is al eerder gezegd en we hebben het bij hem ook gemerkt. Passie is ontzettend belangrijk in de bouw. Passie, daar gaat het vaak om. Nou, als je het vindt in een bedrijf, dan is het wel het bedrijf van de volgende spreker. Zijn neef stond maand geleden nog op de cover van Duurzaam Gebouwd. Houdt Zachariasse heeft gisteren, geloof ik, de titel over van Duurzaam 50 Vastgoed Award NL overgegeven aan Stefan van Uffelen. Het is een prachtig bedrijf waar hij werkzaam in is. Is in Nederland actief. Spreekt vooral Engels. Ik geloof dat zijn vader naar Amerika is gegaan. Heeft hem teruggestuurd naar Nederland om te zeggen, dat is zo'n mooi land. Daar ga je werken. Dit is Owen Zachariasse van Delta Development. Actief in Italië, Nederland, Duitsland en Frankrijk. And Owen, you said it's lovely to work for Delta Development. Why? Because of the passion?
Yeah, because of the passion, the creativity, and yeah, they really let us loose off the chains at that company.
It's better to work in Holland than in America, in the United States?
For me, it is. I've always wanted to be an international businessman, and I think that in order to be an international businessman, you first need to set yourself in an international realm. And Holland has proven since a long, long time ago to be a large international player. So I'm very happy and I consider myself fortunate to be able to do business out of this country.
And how do you translate het nieuwe bouwen? Is that the new building? Is that something you can talk about in the United States or somewhere else?
Yeah, I think we're way further here, so I think they still need to catch up in the United States a little bit. If I look at the building code in the Netherlands, it's right now about LEED silver. So, you know, when we're looking at taking large sustainable steps in the U.S. market, that is pretty much building code here. So, but as we talk about here now, you know, we see that the market saturation of the new stock that comes online is carrying such a sustainable element that now it's now starting to become the market norm, where non-sustainable property is not necessarily, you know, market conform, but maybe even trading at a discount.
Is that what you spread out over the world?
That's what we see, yeah.
And that's now over us.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, give him a round of applause. Owen Zachariasse.
Thank you. Now, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where we're standing right now as a project developer, how we start to see the market develop and where some opportunities are for us, how we start to see the role of a developer really in the development of society, not necessarily just the built environment. So, again, I don't want to be, as you say in Dutch, Zachariasse, but we'll start to talk about where we're at right now. And indeed, we have a problem. Everybody sitting here in the room today knows that, you know, we have a little bit too much stock on the market. So, you know, what we've seen is that right now, in this day and age, financing is hard to come by indeed. We've sitting in a large financial crisis since 2008, especially in the development world. But I believe that there is even more of an underlying crisis that's driving this whole situation, and that is a systems crisis. So if I look back now, what I mean with the systems crisis, I want to take Notre Dame, which took about 185 years to develop, and this is a wonderful example of what our industry used to be. It was a craft. We created art. The architect actually came in as almost the right-hand man of a new king or what have you, and as soon as somebody would, let's say, take over an area, you would erect this huge structure that would impose your dominance, right? So an architect was almost an artist, and he was center of the universe. He was financier, he was engineer, he was architect. But today, we really know a lot about nothing, where we have a lot of specialists involved in their own little corner. And yeah, I think that the system really is working ineffectively. Now, if I look at how this building developed and how slowly it developed, and then I look at what we do today, that we are actually building cities now. Our society is growing at an enormous pace. Technology allows us to develop these certain types of issues and to really work time and place independent. We see this is Inner Mongolia here. We've seen the explosion of the middle class in China result in cities for hundreds of thousands of people being built within 10 years. But the flexibility is not there. I mean, these are extremely heavy structures, and to remove them from the market would be a very big challenge. Now, I have a video that I want to show you that this is not just across the world. Now, if we can turn the volume down a little bit, it doesn't really matter. This is the growth of Holland, or the Amsterdam region in specific, from 1850 through where we are today. And so we start to see, yeah, the growth kind of take place. A little thing sprouts up here and there. We're coming up on the red line, which is the Industrial Revolution in the early 1900s, and then we'll start to see a little pop of red. That pop starts to expand a little bit, and then what will come at now is you start to see kind of, this is a fast growth pace. And we start to see the latter half of this century start coming up right around now. And then what we see now here is after World War II and a further expansion, but the really shocking aspect comes in the late 60s and the 70s, as we're starting to see here now. And we're starting to really see urban sprawl take an effect over here. And what we've seen now is the growth of the suburb. And the growth of the suburb actually now has meant that people could actually get a little bit more room. Schools had a lot to do with why we moved out of cities. But what we've seen actually now, and there's 2010, this is what Amsterdam is looking like today. But what we've actually seen now is we haven't accounted for what happens in the different generations. So we see a mass influx now back to the CBD, to the city center. And this is leaving a lot of areas in the Voorstad or in the suburbs, they're leaving them empty. And this is primarily to do with the monofunctional office park. Now we are building in Hoofddorp, our office is there. And we're looking at 52% vacancy across the other side of the railway station. We're looking at 20+ vacancy on the other side of the dike. And these are enormous problems. And so, and these are the data right now. If you look at the very top over here, this is the latest report from DTZ, and we start to see vacancy rising over the year-by-year period by 15.7%, while take-up is actually continuing to decrease. So the dispersion between what we're putting on the market and what's actually being taken up from the market continues to really grow further apart. And the effect is that we see things like this. You know, this is the old KPN office in The Hague. It's been a model that a lot of people have talked about, but this is a product that not even 10 years ago was selling at 200 euros a square meter. It's on the market right now for 70. So, you know, the dispersion, and we are in a world of supply and demand, just like any other industry. And we have an oversupply and an under-demand. We have an oversupply of square meters. I think we have an undersupply of quality square meters. And that's where we have actually, as Delta, jumped into the market with a very specific price point and a very specific product. But in short, the world looks a lot different today than it did from not even a short time ago. And maybe it's time for us to kind of start looking at ourselves and say, can we actually predict the future the way that we always thought we could? Real estate is a long-term play. It always has been. We've looked at real estate in terms of even 50, 70, 100 years, and people still talk about this today when they come and visit us in the office, where we're trying to make plays in terms of the annuity. So we want to make our business cases within possible lease terms, 15 years, 30 years max. If I want to try and build a product that can deliver 10% to 14%, 14 is a bit high, 10 to 12% return on investment within 15, 20 years. Now, how do we do that? I think maybe we need to try a different approach. So for us, the goal and how we're going to do this is really flexibility. For us, flexibility is an inherent form of value that we for a long time have ignored in our industry. And I'm not just talking about flexibility of being able to do these beautiful renovations from old warehouses into apartments or condos or what have you, but in terms of actually the growth and the diminish of stock, total stock. And when I talk about municipalities here, I'm not just talking about the governments, I'm talking about society, I'm talking about the region. So we started talking about this inside our organization. Myself, our CEO, our commercial director kind of all sat down together and said, what does the world kind of look like? Where do we want to go? And what we came up with is the following. Let's take this piece of virgin land and let's assume that, you know, everything is okay with the soil, we don't need any remediation. So if we have this virgin piece of land right here, now I want to put up a structure, I want to put up, it doesn't matter, shopping mall, housing, office park. I would like that to be mixed use if possible, but what are we going to do? What should this place look like when everything is said and done? Well, this is what we think it should look like. We should be able to remove the future stock as we build it up. So this is really, I argue that the highest value of real property, of real estate, is the most optimal use. So if I look in the Haarlemmermeer And we need food. We need corn, potatoes, 30, 40, 50 years in the future. It's not the highest value if there's an empty office building that sits on this land. Now, maybe we can do kind of high-yield urban farming or something like this, but what if we can actually even remove the stock and put up a school if a school needs to go there, or housing if housing needs to go there, or even farm and agriculture? I think that this is where we should be going to in terms of our development activities. As you say in Dutch, kijk verder than your nose long is, yeah? Think a little bit down the road on what we're going to do with this place. So how are we looking to design here for our flexibility? It's a three-step process or stage, and the first is our process. And this is really to bring down the cost of deconstruction, and I'm not talking demolition, right? No slope. Deconstruction, actually pull it apart piece by piece. So the cost of deconstruction at equal or underneath the cost of slope. That's the step one. Number two is we look for business case. Economics drives the decisions that we make. You can either throw money at a situation and everybody looks at you, gives you a little golf clap, and then goes on their way to do business as usual, or you can show them that this really means good business. And I can assure you, for us, it does. And we look to collaborate. So we look to, keten samenwerking, but also joint development with municipalities themselves to help them solve their current problem, but not only say, okay, how are we going to take care of the current stock, but what are we going to do for 15, 30, 40 years down the road so we're not again faced with this problem? So for step one, again, we optimize that process. We're looking at a platform strategy. If I look at how the automotive industry or even the airline industry has developed in recent years, I find it amazing that each of our projects are an incident. And if we look in the construction industry specifically, we're looking at what? 2% margins? If you hit 2%, then you're doing pretty well. But you're looking at 14, 15% failure costs if things go wrong. So what we look to do is actually spread some of these risks and rewards between the different players, and we're looking to really optimize the development strategy by bringing everybody up front as soon as we can to put the information and the knowledge into the design. Then when we finally design this building, we design it from the beginning to be taken apart. So our architects and engineers don't look at how a wall goes together. No, they look at how a wall comes apart. Because if you answer the question of how it comes apart, then you've inherently answered the question of how it should go together. You've just done it one step further. The next is we use BIM, and we use computer programs, and this again comes into a little bit more of how the automotive industry is done. Computer automated design. Pretty much with our BIM models now, we can identify exactly where materials are in a building, what the volume is, how it got there, how it comes apart. In terms of installations, mechanical or electrical, what's the maintenance contract on this? When are we going to need to maybe remove this heating system out of a building and replace it with a new one? How can we find value for those different ducts? And we do this together with IPEA from out of Germany. A Swedish company called Sundahus has been working for the past 20 years to build a database of over 800 materials. And then we do that as our core group, which is now Delta, Regenboor, and Volker Wessels. Next for us, it's a quality play. This is a whole game, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. We have an oversupply of square meters, but pretty much an undersupply of quality. So for us, we look at buildings as a sum of parts. It's only a conglomeration of different building materials. And so we're looking for the healthiest, safest building materials that we want, because how can a building be high quality if it poisons the inhabitants day by day? So this is something that we really want to do, improve the quality of the buildings. And then again, we're going to integrate our supply chain. We bring everybody up front as early as we can, and in fact, we've brought 41 different companies into the project, many of which you'll find on the burrs here today. And so with this now, we actually look to them, and I look to a company like, let's say, AGC Glass, and I say, look, I want my facade not only to just keep out the weather and actually let some natural light in, but can you start giving me a facade that's going to generate renewable energy, some thin film technology, and that's what I'm looking for. Maybe I won't get it tomorrow, but 2 years down the road, AGC will come to me with an innovation. And this is how I allow them to really stay very close to the market, to the clientele, but I stay very close to innovation as well, so I can always try and stay one step ahead of the new technologies as an innovation officer. And the last is we're actually looking to actually bank these materials. So we want to view the building at the end of its use period, not life cycle, but use period. We want to view it at the end of its use period as a residual value of materials, not sloopkosten, but the value of the materials. And if we've designed the building to be taken apart, we've identified where all those materials are and how much value sits in there, then we can actually start valuing the building in terms of some of its parts. And this is an interesting case here now, actually. This is copper, and what you see is that on the short run, you see a lot of price volatility, but on the long run, you see a pretty interesting trend in that the change of copper over 15 years, which, by the way, is the latest lease contract of a tenant we just signed, so that's why I choose 15 years, is 284% against 33.69% Dutch inflation. So there's a possibility of arbitrage here. Why aren't we actually looking at the copper in terms of value? If we can identify it in that materials passport, extract it at the end of that 15-year period and send it off, maybe we can have a big win there. And if you could actually even bring that win up front in terms of a put contract or a put option, the right to sell that on the market at a certain time for a certain price, and that's bankable value today. An interesting component is now, in terms of that design build process, we've brought the slope model. We're working together with Wim Belen, who we got to meet on a project, the new Heerema headquarters. We actually got to meet him, and we've asked him to join us now and start looking at us in the terms of how we're designing the building. And he says, no guys, don't build it like this, build it like that, because then I can get a machine in to take the building apart, and then we don't have to put 5, 6 people on the site to actually take it apart. Now, if there are any labor lawyers out here, you didn't hear me say that, but really what we actually see is that the cost of labor is 3 times as high as the residual value of the materials. So if we can find a way to automate that process as much as possible, that's going to drive down those costs to deconstruct. And then, of course, we look in terms of the cascade. The best thing we can do is re-let the building. The second best thing we can do is repurpose it. The third best thing we're looking to do is look to use steel trusses, kanaalplaten, a whole facade, maybe a roof. And the last thing that we can do is actually look at the sum of parts and materials. And I can tell you that to right now, we've gotten to right about there. The business case is break even at around components. We're still underwater in terms of the materials, but we got a bunch of smart people working on this. So I'll talk to you in a year, and hopefully I got a different thing to tell you. And the last is we look to actually engage in interesting leasing contracts. Now, this is a difficult one, and this is where our lawyers, houdt come into play, because when you start talking about leasing an entire metal structure, then yeah, what happens if the company goes bankrupt? Then all of a sudden the steel guy comes in to start taking away take away the steel while there's a tenant still in place, and that's a tricky situation that we want to avoid. So this one right here, we can do in loose components in terms of the PV systems, the facade, anything that's not directly attached onto the building, that we can really lease right now. Anything free hanging from the ceilings, so even installations, mechanical installations, we can lease all that right now. But in terms of the core and shell structure, that's still a no-go. But we'll sit in The Hague and hope to change this sometime soon. And in terms of our municipality collaboration, we look for large-scale area developments. We're now advising on one of the largest new developments to come out of the Haarlemmermeer, the Schiphol Trade Park. We've engaged with Arizona State University in order to conduct some studies on how we can actually upcycle the value of land. And we look for solutions of the current stock. Actually, we're looking to kind of assemble large, different investors and owners together and give them an exit to a group of property in Baukenhorst West, where actually the property in the book is worth less or worth more than it is on the market, so they're underwater there. And we hope to find a solution with them there, and we're coming quite close, actually. I think that we're going to right around the corner from a very interesting solution that could make a big play in Holland in helping this situation further. And in schools, this is one of pet project for me, is I really want to do an elementary school. So if anybody out here today has an elementary school that they want to do, something where we can actually build really healthy environments for kids and help grow minds, grow people, grow inspiration, come talk to me. I'd love to try and find one of those with you. So that's my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention.
Owen Zachariasse, thank you very much. Yeah. Just one question.
Yeah.
You have fallen in love with Cradle to Cradle.
I have.
That's your story.
Yeah.
Some people haven't done that still. What's the difference? Well, I mean, what's the key of success to do so?
Cradle to cradle, it just for me, I don't know if there's a key to success, but it plucks at my optimistic heartstrings, you know? I think that it's something that really in two ways about me, my dad's a developer also, and my mom is someone that spent a lot of time at Woodstock in the 60s, and we were always planting trees and everything as kids growing up, so there's always been this internal battle between trying to take care of, do something good for the environment and do what I love, which is real estate development. And for me, Cradle to Cradle really hits both of those. It looks at economics and free market society as being the driver of change, and I believe fully in that. So.
Also as a businessman?
Absolutely as a businessman. For us, I can say that it's not only been good for our business, it's been fantastic for our business. So, you know, we give 0 concessions. We're selling at a market premium where I think the market in Hoofddorp is now renting at about 180 euros a square meter. We're renting at about 200 euros. Not a single day is rent free. And we're still even entertaining loan-to-value ratios of even upwards to 90%, which is fantastic of even in the good days. So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So for us, the numbers are really showing that this is an extremely profitable model. And I would love to share all the information I have with other developers, and because I think it's good for everybody.
Do you have to share it, or can you copy it?
Absolutely. I think that, I mean, if you look at, I studied strategy at Erasmus, and I think that first mover's advantage of what we have right now is not a sustainable competitive advantage. I think our tacit knowledge in our commercial director, our CEO, our team, you know, this is stuff that people can't copy. You know, where we're going next, that's what people can't copy, and I'm enthusiastic, and I think that we have that nicely wrapped up, but people are going to copy us. It's only a matter of time,
you're a businessman.
Yeah.
And you say, as a businessman, please copy.
Yeah, competition's good for everybody, right? It's good for me too. Helps me stay on top of my A game.
Just 1 minute and I fall in love with him. No, okay. Give him a round of applause. Thank you very much, Owen Zachariasse.
Thank you.
Thank you.